Hi everyone, this is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Live, and today prime lunchtime with City Manager. Hey Brian, how are you?
Rico, good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we're going to be talking with City Manager Brian Johnson here. But before we get there, I just want to say thank you to our um, corporate sponsor, EV Remodeling. They've been a corporate sponsor for several months now, both of our journalism in print and online, and of these podcasts. So check them out. Design your space, design your life is what Eli goes by. And you can find out more about this Peachtree Corners company, who's headed by a Peachtree Corners resident. Great website, great pictures. You should check them out. Go to evremodelinginc.com and you'll get more information about what they do with regards to remodeling, whole house remodeling, design and build, and stuff like that. So, great local guy. He's always willing to help. So now let's talk about. We're going to be talking in this podcast. We're going to be talking about several things. One is this recent city council meeting this week, where there was a major apartment rezoning that was up for vote, and that was actually turned down by the city council. So we'll get into that and why that happened. We'll also get into a bit about a local company called FUSUS that has that's going to be partnering with the city to create essentially a real-time crime center in the sky. And we'll talk a bit more about that and what that means when it comes to cameras, security cameras, ring cameras, all that throughout the city and how that would work. We'll talk about that as well. And of course, we'll talk about the forum at Peachtree, which is maybe the name that it may be at some point, and talk about the new owners and what their plans are that they revealed at the recent United Peachtree Corners Civic Association forum on that. So let's go right into it. And of course, we'll talk about the Israeli trip that Brian Johnson took, right, Brian? Economic impact and looking to bring businesses from Israel to the United States and particularly to Peachtree Corners. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. So we're, let me put my cat down, the
That
little
is
guy.
still. I swear
He's gonna,
he knows when you're on. When you're live. It's funny.
that's amazing. He just, yes, he's an amazing little guy. So let's talk a little bit about what happened because everyone knows about density. Everyone talks about it, right? Let's talk a little bit about the apartment vote that happened, that rezoning that came up this past Tuesday, Brian. It was 200 plus 270 units that was looking to be built behind Bank of America on Peachtree Parkway and Spalding Drive. So tell us a bit about what happened Tuesday night on that.
There was in fact a rezoning application to do what was a mixed use development, but it was a mix. The mix of uses was a combination of the parcel with the building that Solient is in,
Right.
the old career builder
Hmm.
facility. That building was going to be combined with the parcel in front of it that faces Peachtree Parkway, and it kind of goes around or north behind Bank of America, and then it
Right.
also fronts. It would have fronted Spalding,
That would have
and
been that parcel also had, I think, an automotive repair shop or something. Is that part of
that
that
is
same?
correct. They had I guess a contract on that, contingent upon a favorable zoning, but that would have also been absorbed into this.
Right.
So they would have kind of gone around, and so some of it would have fronted, some of it would have fronted Peachtree Parkway, some of it would have fronted Spalding,
Right.
and then there was going to be some retail, and then there was 200 and 50 to 70 residential units. I can't remember the exact number, but that was in front of city council, and
Mhm.
you know, uh, some people don't maybe acknowledge this, but city council does in fact, you know, consider every single rezoning based on the merits of that rezoning. There is no preordained like, oh, if it's this, we're just gonna. I say that to say, this was a good project, but there were, and I don't know why each one voted exactly the way they did. So that's up to them. I can tell you, based on comments made at the city council meeting,
Mhm.
that comments of concern that the ultimate vote of 7-0 to deny the rezoning application. Again, I don't know the individual reasons, but there were comments of concern about certainly public safety with the traffic, specifically on Spalding. There was going to be a proposed entrance or exit to this facility on Spalding, very near the Peachtree Parkway intersection. And it would line up basically across from one of the two entrances, south entrances into the Goodwill Shopping Center.
Mm-hmm.
That one, and a lot of concerns about how that would be handled in the safety factor, the vehicular safety factor of all of those vehicles, and more facing movements being introduced in an area that already has a lot of people kind of coming and going from different directions. And so public safety was certainly brought up. Traffic in general was brought up. Trees, would have been clear cut was brought up. They were taking an existing drainage basin, a pretty significantly sized one, and we're going to bury it and put it into an underground vault and then build on top of it. And so, that complicated drainage project was brought up. So there was a lot of comments or questions kind of couched on the concern side that council made before they voted. Obviously, each one doesn't say why exactly they voted the way they did, but the result was 7-0 against. So that will not be rezoned.
Unanimous. Okay.
To add 250 plus apartments.
Interesting. That's the one that I remember seeing the rendering on that looked actually really good as far as that rendering went, which, actually almost looked too good to me, because it's interesting how developers will come in with certain renderings and, it had like a pool, food truck, all the stuff, and it looked really like a Brookhaven or Buckhead type of development. But I agree with you, it would have been shoehorned right behind that Bank of America. And Spalding Drive already has issues when you're dealing with Friday nights and school time, because Wesleyan and Norcross High School that goes down that road also.
Yeah, and look, the project, Brand Properties is a quality developer. They've done good stuff. They built what is now Cortland on PIP. So, we're not unfamiliar with them at all. The project certainly also had merit. There were some exciting things, including I would have loved to have seen what people there within walking distance might have done to that Goodwill Shopping Center site. It could have. So it was certainly not easy. These are never easy decisions by mayor and council. They consider them very, carefully, each and every one. And, they have their reasons, but, these things are not easy. They have consequences, some positive, some negative, and council has to weigh it. And, I promise you, there are many a times where I'm sitting in my seat, glad that I'm only the non-voting, chief executive officer of the city, and I don't have to make a vote on that stuff, because some of it's hard. And this was a good looking project, but
no, definitely. Yeah. And there's going to be more coming up, right? So there's another one that's supposed to be coming up that's across from the wine store, the corner Fine Wine. That's also another 200 plus apartments. So I'm sure that's going to be coming up. Didn't that get a first read, maybe?
It had been tabled, and it is for 60 days. It is in fact coming up in June at that council meeting, coming back off the table. So yes, council has more applications that include mixed use applications that have, a couple hundred apartment units as a part of it. But yes, there, what can I say? It's when you're a great community to live, work, learn, and play in. The developers take note, and they're all wanting to come in and try to build units because they know that they can fill them. But council's got to consider all the implications of these developments, and they will continue to do so in a very careful, comprehensive manner.
Cool. Well, good to know that the council's actually, looking at those things like that, because there are a lot of the other apartments that's already on Peachtree Parkway. South of that, there's 200 plus units also coming in there. And originally I thought
There
that
are
the,
that one does have an equity component to it. There are townhomes going in part of that, and that is, that did also entail the removal of vacant, buildings that were
oh
there,
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah,
single story, and an adaptive reuse of an existing building. So,
right. Well, originally, but that building was taken down, I think, also. That office building, if I remember correctly. I don't
well,
think there's any
it
building
was the
standing there anymore.
skeletons is going back in.
Okay. So
So,
building on that foundation, I guess.
oh yeah,
Okay. So cool. So let's move on a little bit to another topic, which, you know, some people might look at this as sci-fi or, you know, London or, international smart city has an eye on you now. But this is really talking about a local Peachtree Corners company called FUSUS, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, FUSUS, that has really hit big. I mean, I've seen news stories on them in other cities and what they're doing. They based here in Peachtree Corners. They've probably had already several rounds of funding, but essentially working with the city to create a real-time crime center in the sky that can see everything well, not everything, but effectively almost everything that's going on in the city in real time. If there's crime, they'll be able to search out that situation. So tell us, and this is going to come up at the cops meeting that's being held tonight, Thursday, while this is
that's
being
correct.
recorded. So,
That is correct. So, I'll start with FUSUS.
mhm.
They are a corporate tenant of the city. They are in Tech Park, and we are very proud to, to tell people that they're headquartered here because of two reasons. One, cities are always proud of companies that are really growing fast because they have a great product and great
Right.
leadership, and we love to thump our chest and point to corporate tenants that are significant.
Hmm.
That's what sets cities apart from each other.
Yeah.
But FUSUS is blowing up because, in addition to us being proud of them growing, we're also proud of the fact that they're kind of another example of the really innovative companies within the tech industry or using tech to create a product that are coming out of Tech Park and the Curiosity Lab area, and FUSUS is one of those. They are a company that has created a platform to allow for the integration of all video cameras from owned by any entity, public, private, commercial, residential, from any make, model, any manufacturer of any kind. They can be integrated on their platform in the cloud for law enforcement personnel to have access to for the performance of their law enforcement duties. Now, I do want to make sure I say early on that when this platform, while it exists and theoretically we could have every single video camera of every type in Peachtree Corners, whether it
Hmm.
was a big, massive pan tilt zoom commercial camera or just a Ring video doorbell, on a home. We could have them all on one platform for Gwinnett PD to use. The very important point here is their platform merely provides an avenue for the owner of said camera to give permission for that camera to be integrated into this network. So nobody has to allow their camera to be, part of this.
Hmm.
Nobody, there is no technology that can pull video from a camera if the owner doesn't want. But what our partnership with FUSUS is going to do is we are going to be announcing an initiative called Connect Peachtree Corners. And this initiative is one in which we are, with FUSUS, our partnership is going to offer this platform for companies, residential or commercial, to integrate their camera into one platform for Gwinnett County PD to use. Now, there's two ways, there's two levels that this can happen. And mind you, all of this is voluntary. But why we're encouraging it is if you can, think if Gwinnett PD can have a map of where all the cameras are, it could be of huge benefit to them if
Sure.
there was a commission of a crime. So the city will start by all of the cameras we've installed, both LPR, license plate recognition, and video will be integrated into this. And we're going to do it at the higher level, if you will, and it's the level in which you can give Gwinnett County PD real-time permission to tie into the video feed of that camera or to pull stored video from the camera to use again to investigate or prosecute a crime. So the city is going to allow that. And there's going to be a lot of commercial establishments that do as well, because they're going to be like, look, our cameras are up to prevent crime or to prosecute those who, did commit a crime at our place. We are very open to you having access to our cameras and to the video that comes from the cameras that's stored for a period of time. We'll probably have it stored for about maybe 5 days in the cloud. Okay. By then, I think Gwinnett PD would probably know whether they need a feed or not. So that's the higher level, and anybody can do that. But what the lower level, and the level will start, the residents, our only offer to the residents right now will be this other level. And it is merely the registration of your camera to just merely let Gwinnett PD know that you do have a video camera that does, store video for a period of time. And the reason why they would want to just know it, it's a passive knowledge. I'll just use me, for example. If I was like, look, I want Gwinnett PD to know that I have a, Ring video door, camera at my house. I will tell them my address, give them my name, and I'll give them a way to contact me. And then that's it.
Right.
That's all I did. But if there was a crime committed in my neighborhood and they wanted to try to, solve it, if you will, then they can look at a map that has all of the cameras that were registered, and they can reach out to me and say, Mr. Johnson, there was a crime committed in your area. We would like either you to push us video within a certain period of time, or we can, and it's really through the portal. And then they would say, we need it to do, and I could then say no.
Right.
Or I could say, absolutely, I registered my camera so and I give them permission for that particular period of time. They get it, they do their thing with it, and I go back to having my camera be my camera. So, and if in the future they needed to do it again, they would have to request it again.
So just to clarify for those that would ask about this, if I have a Ring, I can register it with them for live feed, right, as a resident?
So no, not as a resident right now. We're going to only offer that to commercial right now.
Commercial. Okay. So the only thing that a local person like myself with the Ring, let's say, would just register that I have it.
Yes.
They would have no access to it.
Correct.
Unless they wanted something, then I would literally have to download that video for them, because they have no access through the Ring to be able to do that. All it is that
you would download it, and you would download it through the FUSUS platform, which is a seamless way to get it there, and then you're done. And the request would be merely for that. So if the following month there was another crime and they needed more, they would have to go and request it additional time. Each time they would need to request it. Right. So there's no risk of, somebody's going to be able to see it. It is all in the control of the owner. But just think of how powerful of an investigatory tool that could be to Gwinnett PD, especially when solving some of this crime is best done in a very short, a very close proximity to the crime, one. And two, people have limits. People that store their video data have limits on when that data is recorded over or lost, because it costs money. And so if they didn't know that the, Figliolini family had a camera, and then they're canvassing the neighborhood and it takes a day or two, and then they got to get your contact information. They finally reach out to you get a hold of you 5 days after the crime was committed, and they're like, "Can you get a video feed?" And you're like, "Sure. When do you need it?" And they tell you, and you're like, "Oh, well, 3 days is all I keep my video, and it's 5 days if I don't have it anymore." That could be avoided if you had registered, and they could have reached out to you directly. They knew you had one. They knew how to contact you, and they could make the request. That is why we're encouraging residents to register their cameras.
Now, and I can see, I mean, this is a great opportunity to be able to help the police in cases where they need that. Because, maybe the crime happened 2 blocks away, but the car passed in front of my house, passed in front of the subdivision, maybe went down East Jones Bridge. You're following camera by camera. At some point, you may be able to see something that you wouldn't have seen from a different point of view. So I can see that, right? So, but I can also see people saying, well, it's a privacy thing. Well, it's not a privacy thing if you're not allowing the access. All you're doing is registering to say, yes, I do have it in case you need it.
Then you have to make a request. Then here's my contact information. You got to make the request. I'll consider the request by case request. If and that's it. The owners are in total control of this, but they may have video feed that is critical to a crime.
So what's the future of this? Is this moving towards possibly allowing access to residential eventually that could be part of this network in a live way? Or is it strictly going to be commercial?
No, I think ultimately, what we're rolling out commercial is, in addition to registering it, it is allowing Gwinnett PD to have access to the live feed and to pull video down as they see fit. There's also a communication network, meaning people through the FUSUS platform, companies can communicate to each other directly. Like you could have a jewelry store, down by Target and in Publix, and I've got a technology store up at the Forum, and you could kind of, and then there's a lot of others, and you say, hey, somebody's robbed me and this is how they did it, be careful, or I heard this. And so there's already a network as well. You could technically you can send an alert to Gwinnett PD directly through the platform. And I'm not doing it a disservice. FUSUS their platform has a lot of other stuff that you can see. But the main thing would be on the commercial side of the house. We know already lots of businesses or developments that would be like, oh, absolutely, you can have live access to this and have access to our, however long we store our video, because crime happens all the time. Maybe it's in a parking lot of a big road, like the public shopping center parking lot does have, snatch and grabs out of cars that happen in a, way more consistent way than we want. Even if it's only once every couple of months, it's still more than you should. And so those are establishments that are like, yes, Gwinnett, here you go. We're going to, get our cameras on the FUSUS platform. You got access to it. We're going to communicate with you through it. Please help us prosecute crimes. And maybe over time, the word gets out that, man, Peachtree Corners is locked down. In some areas, that's not the place to go.
So just to ask a few more questions on this, the license plate recognition cameras will be part of it. All the city cameras that are on the, town center and other parts, intersections, all that.
Yes.
And is facial recognition any part of that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so that doesn't come into play even later, because that could be separate software that would analyze a piece of video. So that's not something that FUSUS is necessarily working on or included in this.
No, and I'm not saying that they don't. I don't know if they have the technology. Look, we know that facial recognition software exists in the world, so it's not like, do they have it? It will not be a part of this program. I cannot envision that it ever would be. And in fact, there are laws that, I don't even think it's necessarily completely the city's decision anyway on that kind of thing.
Right.
But we definitely have a responsibility when it comes to what's called PII, personally identifiable information. And the
Mm-hmm.
city wants no part of having that data out there to be used in a way that could hurt somebody, or identity theft, or whatever. But no
Okay.
facial recognition, no
Okay.
using this. The city itself, like employees of the city or whatever, will not have access to this. I won't be able to go in there. This is going straight to Gwinnett PD.
Right.
It can only be used,
Right.
to in association with prosecuting or trying to investigate a crime.
So let me ask you another question. The someone else had pointed out that the cops meeting, my little cat, the cops meeting.
He wants to be on camera. I mean,
I
he has
know
no
he's
problem with.
he's a cute little guy too,
Yeah.
but and determined. Um, but there was something else someone else had mentioned that the cops meeting may also bring up, does the city want its own police force? And I didn't know that was part of it, but I was told that that may also be part of that discussion. Um, I mean, the
Well,
city's not, is the city looking, or has the city stepped toward
no,
researching any of that?
no.
Okay.
I mean, so look, Rico, that comes up periodically, and it's a fair question
Yeah.
by people who may not know the answer. And it's also a fair question every now and then if people feel like responsiveness is not there. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, at the end of the day, if we had our own police department, technically, could we be more responsive because we have a smaller area for us to know and police? Probably.
Right.
But the cost, the loss of the economy of scale that we get with Gwinnett PD
Right.
is such that we would most certainly have to levy a city property tax if we stood up our own police department. I don't know what millage rate we would. I had
Right.
not, dug in, but into how many officers we would need, how many shifts, how many zones, how many cars. But there's no doubt that we
Mm-hmm.
would have to levy a property tax. Now, at a certain point, I mean, that's a political decision, and
Mm-hmm.
the community communicates what they want through our elected officials. And so, it's not entirely, implausible that in the future the community could tell their elected officials we want it, and we'll do it. We would just want the residents to know, the implications of that decision. But it's happened with new cities, plenty. There have been a number of them that started without it, now have it. So, but
Yeah.
but no, right now Gwinnett County PD is doing a good job. Certainly, there are instances where people are frustrated, but maybe a good example of that is the street racing intersection takeover.
Right. Right.
There were
But
frustrations by lots of people legitimately on how it was being, dealt with, or the fact that in people's mind it wasn't being dealt with. And Gwinnett County, and Major Eddie Restrepo, the West Precinct Commander, heard them and did a phenomenal job through multiple agencies outside of Gwinnett,
yeah.
and did that arrest. But so Gwinnett, Gwinnett right now, is doing everything they can, especially based on their staffing levels, like everybody else, and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So no, the city's not looking to do that. Certainly, there are room for improvement sometimes with Gwinnett PD, but they do hear, they do, you know, change,
They seem,
improve. Yeah.
yeah, and they seem to be sensitive to what we need. And you're right. I mean, we've had this discussion before about what that would mean, having your own, have a city having its own police force with its own police department, police building, SWAT team, everything else that has to come into it, training. There's just so much involved in having your own police force. So yeah, the budget we talked about would be in several millions, if not more. And then you'd be competing to hire good police officers. That's the other thing, because even Gwinnett Police has open vacancies, vacancies for jobs that they can't fill yet.
No doubt,
So
Rico, no doubt. So
yeah.
it's a fair question the residents should ask, every now and then. So if it
Hmm.
comes up, I'll tell them what I just told you. But again, not my
Right,
decision. The
right,
community will let the elected officials know when it's time.
cool. So let's move on to the forum at Peachtree, or Peachtree Parkway, as some people might say. We had the United Peachtree Corners Civic Association held a forum this past week where Tim Perry from North American Properties came out to speak, to give his vision about what the property would be, about what he sees as essentially holistically a downtown area that's going to have energy, density, that's going to have different types of retail that's there than that's there currently. A bit more like Avalon is the way he described it, right? Um, which means, as he explained during that forum, means adding density for sure, because that's definitely something that he feels has to be part of that formula. We're talking about density both on the town center side, meaning apartments there, apartment development there, in the lot behind Chase Bank that used to be owned by Roberts Property, or probably still is while they're negotiating, and I think that's under contract, I guess, at this point. And plus a boutique hotel, an apartment on the forum side, excuse me, which he explained where that would be, which is facing actually down the boulevard of the forum, as well as running along Peachtree Parkway. Um, and that the Indigo, or the boutique hotel, whichever that is, that would come in would actually open out onto a place that would path to the pedestrian bridge, let's say. So he described a really great development along with what he wants to do on the interior property. And to my surprise, quite frankly, there wasn't a lot of what my people might say, a lot of questioning about density of lot. I mean, there was some questioning about that, about apartments, but I didn't see a lot of pushback. I didn't hear a lot of pushback. Now, if you went on next door the day after, it's a different story, and I saw a bunch of comments and stuff there. Um, but I know that North American Properties really wants to create an experiential place for people to go to. And I know the city wants to work with them on this. You guys have been talking about that. So, and they have a pathway, 2 to 5 years. This is not going to happen tomorrow. Even the apartments probably won't happen for the first 3 years, I bet, the way that's going, or maybe. But certainly not in the first year. They still have stuff to do, right? I mean, the way he talked about his timeline looked like it was going to be going out to 5 years on some of these things. So
Yep.
tell us, I mean, you may have heard more stuff since that meeting. Maybe there's other things. Maybe there's stuff you want to reiterate about that.
I mean, you did a pretty good job. I mean, at the end of the day, North American Properties bought the forum for the purpose of helping the city create what we both want to just call downtown Peachtree Corners.
Hmm.
We don't want to continue to do town center and forum side or whatever. They're like, we want to create downtown Peachtree Corners. And, you know, they're the vehicle, the method that they want to help us with is to kind of assist, give a little lift to the glide path the forum's currently on.
Hmm.
Right now the forum is suffering from two things that you need at a large retail development like the forum, and that is you need residential units on site, and you need public activity space for people to hang out at.
Right.
And the forum is missing both of those. And so their plan is to come in and do some significant, upgrades to the center aisle down the main boulevard of the forum, putting in jewel box stores, putting in some smaller event space
Hmm.
down by Belk, putting in a food, what do they call it? A
Like a
food
food
hall.
court,
Yeah, they
food
call it a
hall.
food
Yeah.
hall, like a mini Pont City Market.
Actually, near Kanukin's former location, that
Yes.
empty space across from DSW and in La Peria.
So that's how they're going to activate the forum. So that's the first is, you got to create that place for people to want to hang out, want to be
Mm-hmm.
sitting on benches, eating ice cream, overlooking a little grassed area where there's, everything from, like the big chess things where you got the pieces, the chess pieces are like 2 feet high to,
Right, right.
to things like that. So they're going to activate the forum. Then, as part of this, and you are right, this is a 5-year process, but as part of this, they want to put on site residential at 2 locations, one on the forum side, basically behind Barnes and Noble in
Mm-hmm.
that large surface parking area, and actually would go all the way to the corner where Barnes and Noble is. The intent here being Barnes and Noble stays in that corner, even if it's temporarily, they have to temporarily close while they demo the existing building and build the new one.
Right.
But the residential would go on that side, and then and maybe actually on a little bit on both sides of Forum Drive coming into the Forum from Peachtree Parkway, but certainly on the north side. And then the other residential units they want to put in are on the Charlie Roberts owned property, which is behind the old Black Walnut Chase Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And, the application isn't in. I think you're probably, based on my conversations with them, probably talking around 250-ish units each side of Peachtree Parkway.
And just to let people know that, because they make this comment all the time, that land is cleared because Charlie Roberts had originally cleared it. There's nothing going on there until this rezoning happening. All the stuff that's there is staging for town center or pathways or other things going on. It's not, has nothing to deal with that piece of property.
Yeah, the construction equipment you see on the
Right.
previously cleared path is actually for the city. It's actually
Yeah.
putting in the multi-use trail that's down in the creek. They're doing the work on
Mm-hmm.
that. So they're just staging on that side of the road, which is less, disruptive than staging out of the Cinebistro parking
Right.
lot.
I
So
just
that,
want to put that out there because some people keep telling me, "Oh, they've already started, and they're not even zoned." I'm like, I don't know where you get your stuff from, but no, it is what it is. Yeah.
but anyway, so that would be that's their vision of how to add the on-site residential. And again, mind you, it's 2 sides of the street because their intent here is to help create downtown Peachtree Corners, not just the Forum side.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last final piece would be a boutique hotel, which would be on the Forum side as well, but it would be on the south side of Forum Drive, basically in the surface parking lot that's at the end of where, what is that, the AT&T,
Correct. Yes.
the California Pizza Kitchen, Chipotle,
Right.
that area that you go, and it dead ends there right at the Forum Drive. It would be there and up. So all the development on the Forum side is near Peachtree Parkway, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
impacting Amberfield. And
Right.
then obviously the town center side doesn't have any residential there. That's their proposal
Mm-hmm.
conceptually. Now the application for rezoning hasn't been submitted yet. We expect it sometime in early June. But so I don't have the details,
Yeah.
but conceptually that's what they're proposing, and
Yeah.
we'll see.
I do have. They did show some renderings that night. I do have that. So that'll be both in Peachtree Corners magazine and online shortly, within the next day or two. We'll have that along with an article about that meeting.
And there's one other important point, Rico, and that is
Sure.
on parking at the forum. We get a lot of questions about, oh, you're adding activity. We get that, and we know that that's not bad for the
Mm-hmm.
health of but where is everybody going to park? A couple things. One is there's going to be about 200 spots in the middle of the boulevard being removed, not all the way down, just in certain sections for
Right.
there to be those public gathering space activation spaces to be added.
Mm-hmm.
But 300 spots, 200 plus an additional 100 are going to be part of a structured parking deck that would go in next to Belk on the backside where they have their large, or the large surface lot there. So, which would only be about the same height as Belk. So it's not going to be some monstrosity. It's going to be about the equal height as Belk. So there are additional parking spaces being added for that. In addition, every residential unit and every hotel room, all of those parking requirements are going to have to be part of that particular area of the forum's development. So it'll have to be structured parking inside of the development itself. So those residents and
They may
those
be
who
parking under
are
the
not going
buildings.
to go out, and find parking in amongst the forum. All of those developments have to have their own additional parking specific to the unit. So there's a lot of concern about that. I get that. We do not want it to become such that people don't go there because parking is so hard. And I do know there are some in the middle that are being removed, and maybe that does require one or two people that normally could park right in front of Home Goods that now have to walk 50, 75 feet to get to the parking deck. We get it, but we got to do something.
But it's a whole different experience. And I understand that. Listen, I like driving up and parking in front of where I'm going, and having to park 100 feet away sometimes is like
Who doesn't
inconvenient.
like to
But
park right there?
yes, yeah. So, I'm one of them. I get it. But I don't have a problem walking across the street to park in a deck and then walking back out, because the whole idea, I think has been, yes, there's convenient shopping, but there's also shopping and lifestyle where you may want to go eat something, do some shopping, get some coffee later. The whole idea is to be able to be on premise, or like they like to consider it, on property, like almost like a Disney World, with concierge service and all that. Yes, they have a certain way and philosophy that they deal with the client, which is who the shopper is, right? The whole idea of the philosophy is that you're a client of theirs. You're walking on property. And at the time that you come on property until you leave, you're going to have a great experience there, in whatever form that is, whether it's a great experience shopping, you go into the food hall, doing other things, hanging out with your friends, playing, maybe, some games over there as well. So, I get it. It's going to be different. I mean, it's not going to be like it is now. When I moved here in '95, and the forum has been around for a while now, over 2 decades, right? Um, it's changed. This area has changed. I mean, the forum has 14 closed shops. I know people like to say, why can't it stay the same? And it's not. And that's the problem. And that's why there's 14 closed shops. And it's not because the rent is too high, when rent is maybe 10% of a business budget in a place like that. It is the type of shops that are there. It is the density sometimes, that lack of density. I see stores opening where they're, I'll say, where the $5 cupcakes, you got to sell a lot of cupcakes to pay rent. I don't care what type of rent that is. And if you don't have density to buy that, then it's not coming, because obviously it's not coming. Shops are closing. You have to
Rico,
do.
the points you're making are great because the forum was innovative in its time when it was
Yeah,
first built, because it was the beginning of leaving the climate controlled mall type of,
right.
but what happened is a decade and a half or so later, the Avalons of the world get built, and they had
Mm-hmm.
two things that the forum currently doesn't have. It was like the forum 2.0. It had
Mm-hmm.
on-site residential, and it had space to activate where there could be activities and
Mm-hmm.
concerts and you could play. The forum didn't have that. And in fact, the old owner, AEW,
Mm-hmm.
sold off, as part of the forum, they sold all their properties nationally that they
Right.
owned
That
that did
didn't have.
not have on-site residential and
Yeah.
activation space.
Yeah.
And so the biggest fear I had when we kind of started this process, and we even pushed to the old owner some ideas But the biggest worry I had is one day with the glide path, the way the forum is, that we wake up one day and it's not Belk anymore, it's Goodwill. Or it's not Home Goods anymore, it's Dollar General. And
Yeah.
that just starts pulling the type of orbit of those level
Hmm.
are not quite what we not quite, they're not at all what we want there. And that
Right.
is the glide path we were headed towards if something didn't change. And change is change. And
Yeah.
you know, you got to be careful. Sometimes it can have unintended consequences, and it is going to be different. And it may be to where certain people who like the way it is right now won't like the new way. But regardless, if we're not careful, we're going to have our own version of Gwinnett Place Mall. That
Yeah,
is
and
where
that's changing, and that's changing too now. I mean, they're moving towards a mixed use development on that in that
yes,
area on a scale that's going to be way larger. So that's going to suck, shopping to them too.
yeah, even
So
more, yes,
right, so competing is going to be another issue. But yeah, I mean, my kids and other younger people that I speak to, they do not really go to the forum except for maybe Lululemon or Victoria's Secret when it was there, right? They're going to Avalon. They're going to now, and they complain about parking too, but they're still going. The older people may not be looking at that. They may not like that. It depends on what you want. The movie theater is great. You know, before COVID. So a whole different experience. I think we all go to, some of us go to the coast, and when we go to these small towns that have like that experience where you have the shops surrounding green area and you can hang out and stuff. I mean, that all feels good, right? I mean, it's the same thing here, I think,
yep,
because
it is.
otherwise you get in, right? You get in the car, you shop, you leave, and that's.
And that's not what they want. They don't want you to leave. They want you to hang and just go to the other side of the road. The town green
Hmm.
has people hanging out
Yes,
because there's something to hang out
that's
around,
right.
or
That's
there's
right.
an excuse to hang out, or parents are there watching their kids on the playground. That's why we're
Hmm.
adding playground equipment, is because when you hang out, guess what? When my kids were a lot younger and I had to hang out and they were on a
Hmm.
playground, you know what I wanted? I was wanting to look around for a drink, or
Or the
or
or
kids
the
are like
kids want ice or ice
ice
cream.
cream,
Yeah, yeah,
or you're there a little bit later and let's just stay here and eat. And
right,
that's what activates this stuff. So
right.
anyway, look, at the bottom line is mayor and council are going to be very deliberate, and my staff and I on working with North American to help them get the best product we can. So it does
Mhm.
come with a lot of, we got to be very careful because you can
Right,
create other problems,
sure.
but we do ultimately want the final product in about 5 years. We want people to just call it Peachtree Corners downtown. That
Hmm.
happens to just be uniquely bifurcated by a river of cars, but it's linked together. It's really
Right,
walkable. You got cool stuff on both sides, and it's
right.
just a great experience. And it's healthy. It's got high quality stores, and everybody is just like, yes, this is awesome. So
Cool.
that's our goal.
So let's move on to one other thing. We're at close to almost an hour, so this part's gonna probably have to be a little short. So, but we'll revisit this again in a few weeks, I think, in another podcast where we talk a bit more about technology and what's going on here. But you are in Israel. Economic development means, economic impact here means companies that are coming here, opening up here. Valmet that moved and had a ribbon cutting. Granted, they moved, I think it was from Lawrenceville,
Yeah.
from a different city, and they moved here to Peachtree Corners because they felt that this was the place for them. This is their North American headquarters for a multi-billion-dollar international company. Decided Peachtree Corners is the place to be. While you were in Israel looking and talking to other companies that possibly could be coming to Peachtree Corners as well. And that was by invite from the Israeli government
That's
for us to
correct.
go
I
there.
was invited over there to do a couple things. I spoke at an international conference, a mobility conference there called Ecomotion. But
Mhm.
then while I was over there, we met with, probably in the 4 days after the conference, I mean, probably 30 different companies and 6 government agencies about them doing something in Peachtree Corners. In some cases, very temporary. In other cases, exploring whether or not to open up, branches or expand into North America. And Peachtree Corners is the place that they do it at. So it was over there all with the intent of economic development, pulling activity back here so that people eat in our restaurants, shop in our stores, and keep generating. And obviously we want them to, expand their businesses here permanently, but all of that is generating income, revenue. And that's the lubricant for this city to do things and be a healthy company. It's why also we still are the second largest municipality in Georgia with no city property tax. So
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I'm glad that we were able to fit all this in. Just a lot of stuff that we had to unpack here, and we could go on. And I know that we should do another podcast just talking about Curiosity Lab, Tech Park, all the good things, all the new companies that are moving into the Peachtree Corners. There's just a lot to talk about. So that'll be another episode just by itself, I think, just talking about that.
works for me.
Yeah, so I appreciate you being here with me. Everyone that's
Thanks for
listening.
having me.
Yeah, no, it's always good. I appreciate the forthrightness and honesty of answering my questions and such. Now, some people may, listen. I'm a big advocate of smart cities, of good development. I'm not against apartments. I'm not against wholesale of things that are changing. I'm not that type of person. I look forward and I move forward. And I like to see the development, and I like what's been going on in this city. I've lived here since '95, so the things that are going on with the city, there's very little that I don't find good. You and I have had discussions both on the podcast and off, and I've had this with other city council people about what density means, about mixed use, about raising the bar and what that means. If we are a smart city, what those apartments or condos or equity properties should be like, what they should look like in a smart city. We've had that discussion, I mean, it goes back and forth. I have my own opinions about
Oh,
certain things.
you certainly called me out on stuff that you didn't agree
Yes,
with. Yeah, absolutely.
yes, and you've been fine with that, and as you should be, because you represent the work that the city council, the leadership, and what you're implementing stuff here. So it's always great to talk about these things because I don't know everything, but I know some things, and I'd like to be able to, have that back and forth. And I've seen good things happening. I mean, I think the mixed use ordinance was changed a little bit now to allow a certain percentage of retail versus residential, whereas before it was a smaller version. We've had that discussion where a coffee shop does not make a mixed use plan. In
And
fact, why don't
some of
you hit
what
on
you
that for two
said,
minutes?
Rico, it's put a bug in my ear, and I've gone back to staff and said, "Hey, what about this?" And that is actually an example of one where we had a conversation about the you know developers doing the symbolic second
Right.
and third use to get the mixed use, so that they really do apartments. And so we have significantly increase the minimal percentages of non-residential uses in a mixed use development because of that very thing. So yeah, we're certainly not perfect. Hopefully, sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. Other times, other people have great ideas. You've certainly given me some, and then we go back and we're like, you know what? That's better than the way we were doing it. So we're
It's good
like a startup
conversation.
ourselves. We're always learning.
That's for sure. Evolving. Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you for EV Remodeling Inc. for being a corporate sponsor and supporter of the journalism and the writing that we do, as well as the content that we create here. We're talking to other people, other companies as well. We'll have our next issue of Peachtree Corners magazine actually coming out in the next 2 weeks. So a lot of stuff in that. So look out for that, and tell people about the podcast, about the magazine.